Hello and welcome to another live demonstration. Today I'm going to revisit using Pébéo because I think it's such a vast medium that I can always do something different. And apparently it was my first live demonstration I did. This is now my 94th, so that's quite a lot of information out there. So Pébéo, it's a solvent-based paint, but it has wonderful characteristics that it makes its own patterns, and I'll talk about those as we go through. What I'm going to do this time is I'm going to create a 3D effect. So I've had a stencil made from the mount cutter, so it's using mount board, but there are plenty of different types of stencil out there, and you can use whatever you want. I'm going to be using the Pébéo Studio Acrylic Auxiliaries. Now these are a number of different mediums. So I'm using the modelling paste and the sand texture. The others I'll probably use at another time for a different demonstration. And I'm going to create a 3D effect. I'm going to have to do things in stages because things take time to dry and I won't be able to do it all in one go on a live demonstration. So I'll have one prepared. So modelling paste, this is really quite nice and fine, and I can just, in this set it comes in these little pots and there are tubes available which I was using earlier. So just dropping in, and it's going to be like icing a cake. I'm just going to push it over the stencil, and you don't waste much because you can use the excess to scrape up and fill. Oops, I've moved it. This is because I need to hold it with both hands. So pushing it in, and I'm going to try and create some areas to be a lot smoother than others so I can add additional texture even within. Let's put it on my right. It's not so easy, I should have taped it down, but you live and learn. Okay. So I'm pushing it into all the nice raised areas. That will make a really nice shape. So like I say, any stencil will do. The great thing about the mount board one is it's quite thick. So I'm going to make quite a raised profile. Okay. Making sure it's pushed down. What I do notice with the mount board, once it gets wet, it starts to bow a little bit. Try and drop some into the middle so it's not too flat. Okay, so keep going over areas to make sure it's pushed in. And you can see it once you scrape it off. There is a technique to it and you will get much better at it. Again, like I say, I should have taped it down really. So now I think I've got enough on here. Let's scrape off because I want to pile it into the middle a bit more. Create slightly raised in the middle. Where the shell of the crab is, and this time I'm going to just make it a lot more textured. Swirl it and push it around so it adds an extra bit of texture into the shell. And now I'm going to shift it. So just double smoothing off the legs because then it's a different texture. Okay. Let's see. Hopefully it's created a nice raised shape. There we go. Lovely. Just throw that away because it's wet and I'll get it everywhere. And I'm working with Pébéo. I'm going to get paint everywhere. I tend to do that. So I just make sure I'm cleaning off things as I go along. So that's created very smooth areas and a nice raised silhouette. I'm going to use another medium from this set, and this is, it's called sand texture gel, and it really is very gritty. So Just going to drop it on, and I don't know if it will pick up, but it will. It's really gritty to apply. So I'm just not going over the whole of the board because I want 3 different types of texture. The canvas texture, the raised smoother texture, and this sand grit texture. I used a metal knife previously when I did this, and it actually went on a little easier than it is going on with this plastic knife. There's obviously a bit too much flexibility, but it was the one I had on hand. So, to be honest, I've had enough of that. I'm going to use my fingers. Just push it in, push it into areas so it just doesn't get it to stick. So this will take, I usually leave it overnight to dry. So I'm going to have to use one I prepared earlier because there's no way I could have done this and we just stood around letting it dry for 12 hours. So, but you can see here the different textures that you're getting, and I'm going to leave that area. So they're just 2 of the mediums in the Pébéo range. And then we're going to add colour to it. But I think that's a good time to take a short break while I change over and get one that has dried. So join me in a few minutes after this quick break.
Let us bring out the artist in you. If you'd like to learn how to paint or improve your painting, the SAA is here to inform, encourage and inspire you every step of the way. When you become an SAA member, you get so many benefits, including the free bi-monthly newsletter Paint, packed with inspiring step-by-step projects, fascinating articles and detailed information to get your creative juices flowing. Discounts on over 13,000 art products featured on the SAA website and in the Home Shop catalogue, with free order line and free delivery in the UK mainland. A devoted SAA team on hand to answer your questions and give you the confidence and motivation you need to start painting and develop at a pace that suits you. Plus, a free welcome pack filled with gifts and practical help to get you started, as well as the opportunity to make friends with like-minded people.
First thing you'll be a member is the inspiration for the magazines, to be able to purchase things at a very reasonable price.
Yeah, you get the reduction on all the materials, the advice you get.
I can shop from home.
It's a community.
It seemed like a very friendly sort of organisation.
If somebody's thinking of joining, don't spend too long thinking. Just join. They'll love it.
Hello and welcome back. So this one has had time to dry, but it's the same principle. I put the smooth modelling paste on, created texture in the shell, and then added the sand on. So this is nice and dry. I can now start to pour on the Pébéo. So I'll be using 3 different types of the Pébéo, and you'll see different size bottles, and I explain the different sizes as well. So be using the Prism Moon. Now, Moon is a range of colours, so you get lots of different colours in the Moon range, and it dries to a kind of a hammered effect. You don't need to do anything. Stirring is a big key with these, the prisms, these Prism and Moon. You've got to really stir. Shaking isn't enough because the pigment settles at the bottom, and the better you stir, the more you're going to see the characteristics of the paint. So Moon creates a hammered effect, and Prism, it creates kind of a honeycomb effect. And you should see it happening, and it's a real fun. What happens also is you put your Pébéo products on, and they start to merge with each other. So what you see originally is not going to be what it dries to. So that's always the fun to watch and not know what's going to happen. Also, I'm using, this is mixed media. So you've got your Prism, your Moon, and this is vitriol. This is glass paint. So it's a transparent paint that you can paint on glass, but it is wonderful in the mixed media. So it works really lovely with these 2 other paints, and you'll see I will use a certain relief at the end, and I'll put some flakes in. So there's lots of things I can add to it. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to think about, because I haven't used these colours, so I just put them together earlier on. I'm going to start with the crab. One thing I could do is I could use the Cern Relief and go round the crab, which will create a barrier, because this dries, raised, and can create a barrier. I don't have time to do that. And to be honest, when you see me pouring, it all kind of merges into one and becomes very organic. And you can always put the Cern Relief on top, which I'm going to show you later. So, just using the vitriol. Now, stirring is really important. And you'll also see this is a smaller pot. The reason I've got some smaller pots and larger pots are the smaller pots come in sets. So you can buy a set of 6, a set of 12, and they come with the smaller pots. These are individual pots, and the sizes are available in the individual pots. That's the only difference. So I'm going to use this one's called, it's the Vitriol Orange. So I'm going to start by, these are just cocktail sticks or lollipop sticks. I'm just going to drop it into, I could use a dropper and drip it in. So this is where my main colour is going to be. And you can see I'm just pushing it around. I just drop it in. I'm just trying to be a bit more careful with it and less fluid. But I don't mind if it does leak into the background area. That's just more part of the characteristics of the product. So I'm just dropping it on. And you'll see I'm not filling the whole, because I just don't want the whole of the crab just to be red. I've got some other vitriol colours, I think it's yellow. And I might put some moon and prism in this raised structure. So, crab, go, taking some colour. Okay, I think that's fine for that one. Now, I'm not using brushes, because you can use brushes but need really inexpensive ones because they're a devil to clean. You need solvents. So this is why I use lollipop sticks, and I'm going to make sure I throw them away each time I've used them. I'm going to try some, this is Prism Vermilion, and this is one of those that I really need to stir because it's one of the Prism paints. So, I mean, really, really stir, and you'll get the characteristics. So, I'm just going to drizzle this on, and you'll see how it mingles with the colour already on there. Got a little hole there which I wanted to fill. But look at those. All I'm doing is, I'm not making it complicated, I'm just drizzling it on, and it's already creating wonderful, its own characteristics. Okay. Like I say, I could have resisted and create a barrier, but if I'm careful enough, it'll be fine, I'm sure. I want everything I do, I want it to be achievable, so you kind of go, I can do that, and you can. Because the paints are doing the job. So now all I'm doing is I'm shaping using the lollipop stick, nothing complicated, nothing extravagant. And I'm just pushing it into the shape. And now I'll put the eyes on. Trying not to mix too much because I do want to see the different characteristics of the paints. But I want to make sure do have a good shape. Okay. Take that down. It goes quite a long way, but it will take 24 hours to dry, which is why I will show you one I did earlier again. Now this is dropped into the background. I don't mind that. It won't be a problem. It would just be part of the, I always say the background colours and the subject colours should have a bit of each in them, just to make it all fit together and be more harmonious. Okay, just dropping in colour. And you can see the shape of the crab now coming through. No paint, no brushes, just letting it run and fill in. Go. Oh no, that leg looks a bit odd. Just need to bring it through. Good. Okay, I think that's worked pretty reasonably. And just look at those wonderful colours. With the prism, you may need to wait a little bit just to see the effects, or I will put some more prism up here, neat, without mixing with any of the other paints, and you will really see it then. So now I'm just going to use vitriol yellow, and I'm just going to drop some colour onto the crab. Don't know how it's going to work, but I'm also going to drop some colour into the background as well. So this, I'm going to let it flow a little bit more, because I want to cover a bigger area. It's quite sandy, that's just gripping the textured paste, but once it dries, it gives you a really wonderful texture. The texture is really different to on the canvas. The canvas will just be really quite transparent. And I could go up to the edge, and if you're very careful, you can control where it goes up to the edge here. But as always, I like the natural finish, so a nice loose edge. Just going to drop colour into here, and I'm going to control it. And this is where we may get some colour running into one another. I'm going to add other colours on, so just making sure. I love the transparency of this. Gives a lovely glossy finish. And when it all dries, and you'll see on the one that is dry, it has a really lovely enamel effect. And that's just the characteristics of the medium. It's nothing else has been added. We've not added resin or anything like that. It's going to mix just now. So a pipette probably would have been a little easier, where I could have just dripped it on. But I like to use these sticks. I like the control I have. And you can go to really small sticks like this, little cocktail sticks, just to push in to some of the finer areas. And I could just pour it on, and I might just do, and I can tip and bend and let it move that way. But because the crab's still a bit wet, I don't want it to move as much as it might do if I had created barriers. It's fine. Let's just drizzle some down here, and then I'm going to change colour. Oops, might be a lot there. Let's move it. Make sure it goes around here. So I'm not being really precise. I'm being quite loose and very, just letting it work. I'm not worried about the dripping paint at all. That's all going to add character. Oops, maybe a little bit too much dripping there. So let's move it into here. If it didn't have the texture paste, it would flow even better, but the texture paste is just creating a barrier, so I'm having to move it around it. That's it. I'll do for that colour. So that's a transparent glass colour. Now what colour can I put on now? I'm going to use some sand, it's a moon sand. So let's see what colour this is. And I know this needs to be stirred. So this is the moon. So it's going to create a hammered effect. When it mixes with the vitriol, it will lose some of the hammered effect, but on its own, areas that are on their own, it will create it. But again, I just pour it on. Oops, it's gone over the edge. Mix it. A lot of it again is letting the paint do its own business. just clean that up because when the lid goes on, I'm not going to get it back off again. So now you can see I can use this. Look at that. Look how that's making lovely bubbles. I didn't expect that. I know what it will be. It will be because I've used a thinner transparent colour compared to this really thick colour. But this is all the part of mixed media, is the differences. So I want this to, I don't know if you can see, but I can see some of the hammered effects starting to be created already, as well as even more different effects from the mixing with the vitriol. Okay, it's easy. Once you've got some of this paint on, it is actually much easier and quicker to fill in because it all runs into one and it's much more fluid. So you can see now how much quicker I'm being able to fill in the space. Okay. Just let that create its own patterns, fill in here. It looks like I'm using a lot, and I suppose I am, but it's not an overly expensive product, but the effects you get from it are so magnificent, you get really addicted. I've dripped onto Gary's board. Oh, I know. Sorry, Gary. Oh, I'm dripping. I'm completely dripping now. I'm just putting that down because I'll get it everywhere. So let's move this. So I might not use all the colours I originally anticipated using because it might take a bit too long, but I think these are working anyway. A little bit more. I've got no real plan. I'm just kind of seeing what's happening. This is the way I like to paint. Don't have a full plan. That's what I feel painting can be. Then you don't get disappointed with the end effect because you had no anticipation of what it would look like. Okay, right, so next colour, I'm going to, this is very clean and clear, so it's not got the sand paste on, and I'm going to try and create a bit of sea colour, I suppose. Crabs live on the sand with beach. Now this is one of my favourite colours. Did I put, was that Prism? That's blue. No, actually I might not use that one. I might use this one because it's Prism and I really want to show you how Prism works. So this is, what's it called? Marina. So it's a much darker blue than I was going to use, but it doesn't really matter. What I really want you to see is the prism effect and the honeycomb effect. So here you can see the hammered effect from the moon. You can see the vitriol and the transparency of the glass paint. So now prism. Ooh, look at that colour. It's fabulous. So I'm trying to keep some areas so that they don't mix, just so you can really get a full effect of the prism. Let's see how much I can push that around. Taking it into the sand and letting it swirl. It's not, the prism's not working yet. So picked up a little bit of the vitriol I dropped in. I really want you to see the prism effect, so I'll put some more on. It's a lovely colour anyway. Might have to just take some in here, and there's a little bit round the crab I need to finish. Okay. I think it is starting, but it would definitely take a little bit more time. Okay. It doesn't always dry the same way as you see it, but it will dry wonderfully anyway. Prism's not, oh it is, there's a little bit of prism working here. See those little honeycomb effects? And it is starting to come out here. Can you see that, Gary? Yeah. So once it dries, it'll be much more effective, but it needs to dry and start to create the patterns. So this is going to dry very differently to what you see now. So I can leave that because it's going to take 24 hours to dry and it will create a lovely enamel finish. So here's one I did, different colours, a little bit more of the transparent colour on here, but you can see around the edge. Oh, I know what I forgot on this one. Let me just go back. Sorry, Gary. While that's wet, I'm just going to add some gold leaf, which is, I'm not taking the lid off this, you can just puff it. Just add some gold leaf and we'll use this to push it around. So that's really added a little bit more texture to the painting. Take some of the leaf off the sand and just keep it on the crab as much as possible. Okay. So you can see how, oh, that's really nice now. You can really see that. How you can add texture to it while it's still wet, because it's going to dry really tough. So I'll let that dry and I'll show you how with this one how you can bring it out even more. So this was what I was talking about at the beginning, and this is Cern Relief. So I could have put it on the white while it was like this and put it on and create a raised area, so when I put the red and the orange on it wouldn't have spilled out into the sand colour. But what you can also do is you can continue, once it's dried I can now continue to work on it, so I can do lots of layers, allowing each layer to dry. So I could put pen on, or I could put another layer on, or I could put resin on. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Cern Relief. Now Cern Relief, used as a barrier, but I find it's very fine enough to actually draw with on its own. So I'm just bringing out the legs, and you can see how that's just improved and added a little bit more texture. Crab arms. So this takes a couple of hours to dry, so it's not as slow drying as the Pébéo paints. So they solvent based take 24 hours. They'll be tacky within about 5 or 6, but if you want them to be this lovely solid dry, just make sure you've given it a good 24 hours. So what I can do is I can now add some texture, and you can see what I mean by the Cern Relief, how fine it is to be able to create little bits of texture. And that will dry raised, so you can see it from an edge there. And can you see the lovely shine? And the first thing people do is, once they see a dried Pébéo, is they touch it and they feel it. It's a very tactile medium, and it's something you really just want to do. So you can see how the patterns have been created. I think I look like I swirled some of the gold in there. So it's a medium that can be controlled. You can create barriers and really control it, or it's just as much fun if you just let it create its own patterns, because what you can do is you can then work on top of it and have a really controlled painting on top of a really wonderful and creative background. So I hope you enjoy that, and join me next week for another live demonstration.